What's up, everybody? It's Clark here for the BOS Sports Podcast. Reeling as Atlanta sports are currently in a state of pure desolation with the World Series hopeful Atlanta Braves going 0-7 to start the regular season. They lost 4 games versus the Padres over the weekend, and the last few nights they lost 3 games versus the Dodgers, including a heartbreaker walk-off home run, Shohei Ohtani off of Raisel Iglesias in bottom 9th inning, in a game which the Atlanta Braves were leading 5-0 there, and early on the second inning, the Braves lose on a walk-off Shohei Ohtani home run, 6-5. After Atlanta sports fans just this fall watched the Falcons spend $150 million on Kirk Cousins just for him to throw the team under the bus in a press conference and not be a team player, with Michael Penix, the young draft pick, superseding him for the starting role. And as well for Atlanta Hawks, Jalen Johnson out for the year with a shoulder injury that required surgery. Just been a devastating time for Atlanta sports fans. We're kind of looking for anything positive to grasp on and look forward to and be hopeful for in the future. For Spencer Strider's coming back. Sean Murphy, we might see him back as early tomorrow night. He's been in Gwinnett. They're rehabbing, playing rehab games. He hit a two-run home run in his first rehab game Tuesday. Did Sean Murphy. It was noted that it was on a fastball that was slightly under 90 miles per hour, so not quite major league level pitching. Was the home run that Sean Murphy hit in AAA Gwinnett the other afternoon. So the Braves, they're supposed to be saving grace at Atlanta sports with all the tough news with the Falcons and the Hawks in the past year. And they're supposed to restore the status quo for Atlanta sports. We knew the team would have a tough start to the season with the road trip in Los Angeles and San Diego, but no one expected a 0-7 start. It has been nothing short of a complete meltdown for the Atlanta Braves so far in 2025. The Braves do have 23 games remaining in April, and if they could somehow finish at or above 500, then that would be a monstrous turnaround and potential trajectory to have a nice rest of the season. It's too early to count them out of the playoffs with 155 games remaining, with the bulk of the rest of the National League having struggles of their own. Outside of the Phillies, Dodgers, Padres, Giants, Diamondbacks are all currently looking strong right now. The rest of NL all have serious roster concerns and Achilles heels, so to speak, for the Braves to attack multiple angles to win and get victories. Upcoming series for the Braves are Braves, Rays, Marlins, Phillies. Some winnable series. We'd certainly want to win the series versus the Phillies next week, if not sweep them to get back in that division race, which the Braves are already 5.5 games behind the Phillies for the NL East. The Braves, no team in MLB history has ever made the playoffs after an 0-7 start, as reported on X by Kevin Keneally, who has also stated online that last time a Braves team started 0-7, the Braves fired their manager, Freddie Gonzalez, back in 2016. This episode again talk about Braves struggles, whether or not they should fire the manager Brian Snitker, a hot topic online currently. As well, right now we're about to do some recap, catching up on the Atlanta Hawks, who just as well lost a heartbreaker last night to Dallas Mavericks. They're in quite a different circumstance here, with 6 games, I believe, going for the rest of the season. They're trying to vie with the Kings. The Hawks have the Kings' first-round draft pick, but is protected between selections 1 and 12. Currently, the Hawks and Kings are tied for the 13th worst in the league. And the way the NBA draft works is they have a lottery selection. Then after the lottery selection, teams by the worst record are then placed for the selections of the NBA draft. So the Kings need to finish at least 13th in the league for the Hawks to have the first-round draft pick of the Kings in 2025. And that's very crucial, as they don't own their own 2025 draft pick. The Spurs have that. They do have the Lakers draft pick, which could potentially be combined with the Kings draft pick and trade up into lottery, which would make things very interesting for the Atlanta Hawks in 2025 offseason. The Hawks, they were up by 5 last night at halftime versus the Mavericks. But with a 34-point third quarter, the Mavericks came back, got a lead. The Hawks fell just short in the fourth quarter of their comeback effort. The Hawks are now 4-6 in the last 10 games and on a 2-game losing streak. A tough start to the month of April after the Hawks had their second best month of the season, going 9-5, and the month of March with a .643 winning percentage, second best only to December, before, of course, Jalen Johnson went down for injury. The Hawks, aforementioned, are tied with the Kings for 13th in the NBA, 13th worst in the NBA, vying to retain the 2025 Kings draft pick. Both teams are one game above the Heat and the Suns, who are tied for the 12th worst record in the league. The Hawks front office has showed, despite their whiff on the Kevin Durant trade, which was confirmed in an article the other day, they still improved the Atlanta Hawks significantly. It's very notable to remember going forward. Certainly have a very positive outlook for this Atlanta Hawks team going in the 2025 offseason. The Hawks front office under General Manager Landry Fields, it feels like they're in a good spot, successfully developing their young talent and having a key eye on scouting players around the league, acquiring Karis LeVert, Georges Niang, Terrence Mann at the 2025 NBA trade deadline to bolster this Hawks roster and have some fun moments for us fans. Feels like if the Suns were to have acquired some of those players in a trade for Kevin Durant, they might be looking at their season differently. So, opportunity missed out for the Phoenix Suns, not making that trade with the Hawks, it looks like, looking back on the 2025 NBA trade deadline. Looking forward for the Atlanta Hawks, the last guaranteed season of Trae Young's NBA contract is next season, and then the season following that, he has a player option. Between the age of Zachary Rizachet and Jalen Johnson, who's projected to be coming back strong from injury next season, the Hawks with this core would ideally look at becoming a contender by next season as early as possible, of course, in hopes of keeping Trae Young happy and hopeful to retain him, extend him for the rest of his career and beyond. So, looking at becoming a contender for the Hawks next season or a season after. And one of the keys, of course, aforementioned, the 2025 NBA draft. And NBA.com, Jonathan Wasserman, he just dropped latest mock draft a few days ago. His previous mock draft, a few weeks ago, he had the Hawks selecting UGA forward Asa Newell, a very interesting potential selection. I believe in this latest draft I saw, he had him selecting sharpshooter Liam McNeely out of, I believe he's out of UConn, who under assistant GM Kyle Korver has already been noted with working with Dyson Daniels on his three-point shot and improving his offensive game. Seeing Liam McNeely potentially come in and work with Kyle Korver is a very exciting potential combination for Atlanta Hawks. Of course, this draft is very front court heavy. The Hawks were to realize that Kings pick, you have to look at potentially trading up to select Kaman Malik. You just saw the other night on Onyeka Okongwu. He struggled against Donovan Clingan. Donovan Clingan is certainly a stalwart center, but as Hawks fans would have liked to see Onyeka Okongwu win that matchup, being more seasoned veteran than Clingan, more years in the league. Unfortunately, that was a tough night for Onyeka Okongwu, so going and looking forward to this NBA draft, if the Hawks do realize the Kings pick, have to think about trading up for Kaman Malik, as we saw him in the ACC tournament, and we're going to be seeing him in the Final Four. He absolutely commands the paint there for the Duke Blue Devils. Often teams will send three guys in an effort to box him out, so he's absolutely a force down low. It's going to be a tough decision for Atlanta Hawks. because on the other end of that, the Hawks could draft players. With the Kings and Lakers pick, you have selections such as Liam McNeely that Jonathan Wasserman projected. Austin Newell, he's probably going to be selected higher than the Kings pick will be realized. There's a French forward named Noah Senge. As well, there's another forward from France I have later on here in these notes that let's scroll down and find it here. I believe Jonathan Wasserman's latest draft has Noah Penda, forward from France. 6'8" forward, athletic forward. His stats out of France are not that eye-popping, around 10 points per game. Just under 26 minutes per game there in France for Le Mans Sarth. 44.3%, 27.5% from three-point land. He's projected to be selected with the Hawks Lakers pick. And Liam McNeely is projected to be selected with the Kings pick with the Hawks. That is, if it's realized and not protected with those selections with 1 through 12. So that would be a very interesting potential draft. And if you still want to go center, still go front court, Thomas Sorber, even after his foot surgery, is now being projected. In Jonathan Wasserman's latest NBA.com mock drafts as potentially being a center in the NBA. And so that's an interesting possibility. Although we haven't seen him like Kaman Malik absolutely command the paint. Other center options in this draft, highly talked about Danny Wolf and Ryan Kalkbrenner. I'm not sure if they'll quite provide the offensive or the rebounding presence, that the Hawks are looking for inside, the paint presence. Overall, rebounding, shot blocking, scoring at the rim is what the Hawks are looking for in a center. And some fans have proposed Naz Reid. He'd be a very interesting player for the Hawks to consider. His contract is currently trending over the $20 million range. I believe around the $25 million range for some projections I saw. So that is not likely going to be an option for the Hawks unless they get under the salary cap. Significant amount. They'd have to trade away some pieces, but the Hawks in free agency are likely looking at adding with the mid-level exception and salary exception, which is not yet, I don't believe it's been set yet for next season, but usually it ranges in the $10 to $15 million range, which Naz Reid has already signed for next season with a player option. He's expected to opt out of it. It's right around the $15 million range. So it's going to be tough decisions here for the Hawks going in the 2025 draft. I feel like if he can trade up, if you realize that Kings pick, and if you can trade up without giving up the Lakers pick, then you absolutely go for it and do it. Because then you get two players in this draft. The Hawks will still have mid-level exception flexibility for next offseason. And there's not a ton of free agents. The free agent depth this offseason isn't very deep. They'll still have some salary room as well. They can aggregate and still make trades as well. So drafting the two players and trading up the first round, that would probably be looking at trading away the Hawks 2026 first round pick. I believe they have a Spurs pick. And then 2027, they have the best pick of either the Pelicans or the Milwaukee team. Bucks. Not the Brewers. Ugh, too much baseball. Got basketball and baseball starting to mesh. So Vit Krejci. Speaking of Vit Krejci, I guess I didn't mention him yet, but Vit Krejci has really been coming along, shooting since the All-Star break. He's been one of the best shooters in the game, shooting 58.5% from the field as a guard. That's outstanding. And one of the best from three-point land since All-Star break with a 52.5% shooting percentage from three-point land. Still coming along, though, with free throw shooting. He shot 70% in the game the other day. Vit Krejci has effectively replaced the role of Bogdan Bogdanovic. You can see him He plugged and played in the same XO kind of role as Bogey, who the Hawks traded away to the Clippers. He's certainly been playing well for the Clippers, but Vit Krejci, he signed for under $5 million a year. So a lot less expensive options. Well, Vit Krejci's defense has been stellar. A little bit over a 1.11 defensive rating, which is above league average. As well, he's a little bit more lengthy of a player. He can be primary ball handler as well as an on-ball defender as well, Vit Krejci. So very versatile player. He can play 3 positions: point guard, shooting guard, small forward, Vit Krejci. It's nice to have a player like that on the roster. Very luxury for the Atlanta Hawks. And we might see the Hawks might have to make a tough decision between Vit Krejci and Terrence Mann if they want to potentially add to this roster via trade or somehow make other salary flexibility. Kevin Durant, he will be supposedly he will be traded this offseason. The Hawks could be in on that. Have to go back and do some math. Probably thinking last episode I carved that out, and that's going to be a pretty tough ad. You'd have to trade away one of the core pieces to get that high salary. I believe he's just around $6 million next season. So Onyeka, Terrence Mann, and others, it'd be quite a monstrous trade. But you'd still have Jalen Johnson, Trae Young, Zachary Riche, Dyson Daniels, Vit Krejci, Kevin Durant, and whoever you draft, Kaman Malik. Be a very potentially interesting team. Kobe Buffkin, if he's still around after that trade. So, back to the draft here for the Hawks. We're watching the Final Four. We saw some other interesting players in this draft. Colin Murray-Boyle's been a very popular name among some fans. I really like Thomas Sorber before he went down with the foot surgery. That was a big blow. Noah Singay in France, very interesting name for Atlanta Hawks. I feel like he has a bit more upside than the other four just mentioned a little while ago. Joni Broom, he's going to be in the Final Four as well. He's starting to trend upward above the Lakers pick. So probably not going to be within selection range for the Hawks. JT Toppin out of Texas Tech. And Derek Queen as well, who had a game winner in tournament this season. Going to be in the 2025 draft after one season at Maryland. So potential rotation if the Hawks were to draft Kaman Malik out of Duke and trade up in the first round. You'd have Trae Young, Dyson Daniels, Zachary Riche, Jalen Johnson, Kaman Malik as a starting lineup. And Kobe Buffkin, Terrence Mann, Vit Krejci, Georges Niang, and Onyeka Okongwu coming off the bench. And then Don Barlow and Mo Gay would still be a part of the equation as well. You'd probably want to have another guard in there. Although you have Vit Krejci, Terrence Mann, Kobe Buffkin. We play pretty tight rotations there with Trae Young, 36 minutes a game usually. Dyson Daniels, he's probably going to be right in there as well. So you're looking at 12 minutes of some combination of Vit Krejci. Terrence Mann has been stalwart on defense since coming over from the Clippers, and Kobe Buffkin, who's still a little bit of a question mark for Atlanta Hawks, of course, going down with shoulder surgery himself back in December. Or if the Hawks were to select two players and get a forward like Joni Broom or JT Toppin, I feel like really help the Hawks mix up that look at the forward position. So unfortunately for Atlanta Hawks, it's been a very fun season, but 6 games left. The Kings absolutely look like they're tanking right now. Sacramento Kings look like they're going all out after an ugly loss last night to the Washington Wizards, a game that Sacramento Kings absolutely should have won. Looks like they're tanking, going all out effort to retain their first round draft pick after trading De'Aaron Fox and their season collapsing. There's even rumors of Domantas Sabonis being traded as well in the offseason as well has come out. So the Kings are in free fall. They're looking to save their season any way they can by retaining their draft pick. Unfortunately for us Atlanta Hawks fans, we have to watch the Hawks battle with that. And for the Hawks, that means potentially losing games as well. As the Hawks certainly got outscored in the second half last night versus the Mavericks. So moving on to the Braves. They were supposed to, of course, be good this season. They're supposed to make us happy. After all the struggles from the Falcons and the Atlanta Hawks over the past year. UGA Bulldogs, too, they lost the college playoffs. They're not Atlanta, though. So Brian Snitker under the Braves. He won the second World Series. There are only two managers in Atlanta Braves history who won the World Series, of course, in Atlanta. Is key to that because the Boston Braves won some as well. Other locations. Brian Snitker and Bobby Cox, of course, being the other. Brian Snitker, since age 25, Brian Snitker has spent most of his adult life in the Braves organization after being cut from the team in 1980. And he got his starting coaching job. Famously quoted that Hank Aaron was heavily involved Brian Snitker early on, and they had a tremendous relationship. As Brian Snitker, he started out in the Braves organization, A-ball in Anderson, South Carolina, when they had a minor league team for the Braves, Anderson Braves, in 1982. He served, Brian Snitker did, nearly every role in the team from Macon, Greenville, Richmond, Mississippi Braves, all previous locations, to being the Gwinnett Braves manager from 2013 till 2016 when he was named manager after Freddie Gonzalez was fired. On May, Brian Snitker officially took over the manager of the Braves May 17th, 2016 after Freddie Gonzalez was fired. Really, Snitker, just 2 seasons later, after the 2018 season, the Braves saw an upshot year, and of course, he won Manager of the Year with Ronald Acuna Jr. and Ozzie Albies absolutely setting the league on fire. The Braves came out of nowhere and won the NL East in 2018, which started this current 7-year playoff run. He might not always put in the reliever that makes the most sense in games, as fans have noted and criticized online his game time decisions. Though over the last couple of seasons, there's been instances such as an opener versus the Padres where he inserted Hector Neris in a situation just simply did not make sense. Looks like I got to backtrack here. Things I've noted and liked about Brian Snitker in his tenure. He tended to keep the bullpens fresh and healthy, which of course was key to that 2021 World Series victory. And that's something that I've always noted and pushed back on other fans who criticized Brian Snitker and his bullpen decisions. Well, he keeps them healthy. And that's, of course, key to winning in October is having a healthy bullpen. Might not always put in the reliever that makes them both sense. Though over the last couple seasons, the things have gotten a bit egregious. In instances such as the opener versus the Padres, when he inserted Hector Neris, and there's no argument to be made there, saving relievers there in the first game of the season. Simply a bad managerial call, and one that costed essentially the Braves only one win to the season so far. As well, Brian Snitker, other things that have been great about Brian Snitker and things I've loved about him is the whole "don't quit with Snit" mantra. And that, of course, started 2018, 2019 as the Braves had these monstrous comebacks. We had that game, Brian McCann. We had that Max Fried walk-off hit way back. Good memories. Don't quit with Snit. And after the 2023 season, regular season concluded, that seemed to mostly end. And there's some brutal games in 2024, a couple managerial decisions and comeback efforts and extra inning games, which Brian Snitker blew. We'll get to those in just a second. Outside some thrilling games, and well, the Braves did come back some. In April 2024, there's some very fun matches versus the Diamondbacks where the Braves came back. Now, some other fans have speculated as well. Ron Washington, Eli White, they're a big part of the vocal leadership that's left. Some say that was don't quit on Ron. A bit wild to say. It was always don't quit with Snit. I guess it was don't quit on anyone in the dugout. Not sure how things are now. The criticism of Brian Snitker's game management decisions did not arise last season, though. They began in 2022 NLDS, as the argument prior to then was still to be made of his successes. Of course, the Braves just came back after trailing the Mets so many games in division and beating them the final weekend prior to the postseason. Brian Snitker could do no wrong in 2022 until the NLDS came. And a very interesting decision of starting Max Fried in Game 1. Of course, he was the best pitcher on the roster, the best starting pitcher on the roster at the time. But he was suffering from injuries late in the season, and that did not translate well. That was something that fans criticized right away, especially with Kyle Wright looking so good, having a 2-run outing versus the Mets just the weekend prior. And the Braves' key comeback to overtake the Mets to win the 2022 NL East. Starting Max Fried at Game 1, 2022 NLDS was highly criticized among fans, and where the criticisms and fans who were not as endeared to Brian Snitker became a bit more vocal. That's where things started to... that's where they appear to become more vocal for me. So Fried, he went 3.1 innings in Game 1 of the 2022 NLDS with Jesse Chavez, Dylan Lee, Colin McHugh, Jackson Stevens following him. So we're as well going to be focusing on the Braves' lack of off-season relief pitching here in a minute. And we look at this 2022 NLDS Game 1. We look at names on there. All of them are out of the league, except for Dylan Lee, who is not... He's certainly had some success. He's certainly a very good reliever. Not sure if we'd call him... He's certainly not a closer. I'm not sure if we'd quite call him as... I guess he's going to have to... high leverage... a bit hesitant to use that word, high leverage, those words, with Dylan Lee. He certainly is for one inning, and we're going to discuss in just a minute how when he goes 2 innings, he certainly sees a lot of problems in high leverage situations, as we saw a couple, including just on Friday in a game-blowing situation. So back to this 2022 NLDS and names Jesse Chavez, Dylan Lee, Colin McHugh, Jackson Stevens. Dylan Lee is the only player left that's on a major league roster right now. So AA has not been giving Brian Snitker the best bullpen pieces to work with, the best pieces overall. The roster's had holes the last few seasons. So kudos to Brian Snitker for working with that. And it's certainly something to be noted in his favor with all these criticisms being hurled his way currently. As well, he started Robbie Grossman that game, another very questionable decision. He got 2 out of his 3 at-bats. And the rest of the series saw Marcell Ozuna and Eddie Rosario go 0 for 16. We found out early the next season, the following season, that Eddie Rosario was partially blind. And it's a very bothering trend. We saw, of course, Brian Snitker was joking when he said the other day he didn't know who Spencer Schwellenbach was when he came up. But we see a trend with the 2022 NLDS. He wasn't very in tune to Eddie Rosario's struggles with his eyesight. He wasn't very in tune with Jurickson Profar's PED use and suspension. A little bit of disconnect here. It's a little bit of a bothering trend that Snit has not been quite as in tune with his players. So maybe we'd like him to be a little bit of a distance from him. 2023 didn't quite matter what Snit did because of how great the offense was. And the Braves, they needed a bit more pitching as they saw Bryce Elder start a game versus the Phillies there in 2023 NLDS. But the Braves, they made a fairly large adjustment to the record-setting offense, of course, ahead of that 2023 NLDS rematch with the Phillies, supposed to get back on them. The Braves' greatest offensive lineup in 2023, record-setting lineup, saw Ronald Acuna Jr. starting off with Ozzie Albies batting second, Austin Riley third, Matt Olson fourth, Marcell Ozuna, Orlando Arcia, Murphy Darnell, Kevin Pillar, or Eddie Rosario, Michael Harris, always in the 9-hole as a second leadoff man kind of role with Michael Harris, 9, Ronald Acuna Jr., leading off. They'd sometimes mess with that bottom portion of the order with Arcia going 8th, or when Darno is in the lineup, you'd maybe bat 6th instead of when Sean Murphy was in the lineup, and he'd bat 7th sometimes. But in NLDS 2023, the Braves starting lineup, they messed with it. Ronald Acuna Jr., Austin Riley, Matt Olson, Ozzie Albies, Marcell Ozuna, Michael Harris second, Orlando Arcia, Sean Murphy, Kevin Pillar, which created a black hole offensively at the bottom of the lineup that Ranger Suarez and Rob Thompson with a bullpen of Jeff Hoffman, which was a free agent in this offseason. He signed with the Blue Jays and is looking stellar, which the Braves signed him. Sir Anthony Dominguez, Jose Alvarado, Orion Corcoran, Matt Strom, Craig Kimbrell, who we might see on the Braves soon. He's currently with Gwinnett Stripers. They shut the Braves out in Game 1 in 2023 NLDS after the Braves messed with their record-setting offensive lineup. They changed it, creating a black hole at the bottom of the lineup there with an odd combination of hitters. Phillies went to town on that lineup. Ranger Suarez, he only went about 3 innings. It was mostly a bullpen game. But with the way that lineup was ordered, the Phillies had a little bit easier way to get in and out of the innings and shut the Braves out. And the offense really has not been quite the same since, outside of some flashes there last April. As noted, versus the Diamondbacks, we had some fun comeback games last April versus the Diamondbacks. Back when Braves baseball was still fun. Oh, it's not been very fun. Injuries, losing. So, moving on to 2024, Brian Snitker, some of the criticisms of fans, or some are speculating for him to be fired. I think it's a little bit too early. I might have posted somewhere online something about him going. I think it's still a bit too early. I think you're looking at how the next week goes. If the Braves lose the series versus the Marlins, I think people should start calling for him to go. So we're not quite gonna get in just a minute here. Got some spills of what's going on. Didn't mean to quite get there that quickly. So, moving back here, 2024, Brian Snitker errors. He made several bullpen calls that lost games. I didn't think too much of it early on in the season. Aforementioned, I always liked how he kept the bullpens healthy. So, I never really stressed about his bullpen calls. I know fans have been yelling about him for years, but it really hit home by August 25th. He'd already made several ones, had already had become lingering in the back of my mind, and I posted about online to remember, and I wish I posted about other ones so I could note them as well. But August 25th, 2024, Brian Snitker inserts Luke Jackson in a 1-1 game versus the Nationals when the Braves still had a shot the NL East there in 2024 in the 7th inning. Luke Jackson gets 1 out and gives up 3 runs. The Braves lost the game 5-1. Luke Jackson, he had absolutely been struggling with the Giants. He was just a throw-in the trade with Jorge Soler. The Giants wanted to get rid of him. And instead of throwing a better reliever, Brian Snitker throws Luke Jackson. Of course, we know now with Joe Jimenez going out that the Braves were limited in options, potentially in ways that we did not know. July 28, 2024, Braves in the heat of their offensive struggles. Brian Snitker had a very interesting lineup with Adam Duvall leading off. Austin Riley, Marcell Ozuna, Matt Olson, Travis d'Arnaud, Ramon Laureano, Nacho Alvarez, Orlando Arcia, and Luke Williams. Very interesting lineup. The very next day, the Braves were up 2-1 on the Brewers when Snit inserted Jesse Chavez in the 6th inning. Jesse Chavez has been a common culprit, unfortunately, in the Braves' losses in 2024. Yeah, unfortunately, have to mention his game again. It was just not a good decision, and it should have been known by July 29th. That Jesse Chavez, a risky move being put into game. Facing the Brewers, of course, NL Central winning Brewers, they have pretty stalwart offense. A 2-1 game, not quite a good call. Bad call, in fact. And Jesse Chavez gave up a 3-run home run. From there, the game was over. The very next day, I already said that. The very next day, the Braves were up 2-1 on the Brewers. So that toyed as well in 2024. Brian Snitker, he toyed with the role of Ray Kerr. He used him a little bit too much as a Swiss Army knife, switching him between relief roles, starting pitching roles, long relief roles, and literally pitched him until his arm fell off as he had to get TJ, unfortunately. Hopefully he comes back strong for the Braves in 2026. All this stung, looking back, the Brian Snitker wrong bullpen decision that probably hurt the worst and probably outline probably summarizes Braves fans' criticisms of Brian Snitker is from May 3rd, 2024. The first game, Braves Dodgers in 2024. Back there, May 3rd, the Braves were tied going into the 10th inning. And, of course, it's very dubious to blame pitcher on giving up a ghost runner. So I'm not quite blaming Jesse Chavez here. I do think it was a bad decision going to Jesse Chavez. And we found out the day afterwards that Pierce Johnson was placed on the IL. He had not pitched in at least a game prior to that. And so the Braves knew that they were down Pierce Johnson for the night, and they got into this 10th inning battle with the Dodgers and had to pitch Jesse Chavez. The Braves had an off day prior to that game, so they knew well ahead of time that they needed another reliever and didn't do anything about it. That was very unsettling to look back on. Of course, the Braves, they were first place in NL East that time. They could not imagine the collapse coming. But that was just one of the things that started to force the Braves. They'd get swept that series after a very tough series prior. First, the Mariners, where they lost. It was a tough series prior to that versus the Guardians. They absolutely shut us down pitching-wise. We narrowly won that series. And the trend from there, that Braves heartbreaking loss in 10 innings, May 3rd, 2024. You look back on it, that's really where all the Braves' struggles to this point had began. The Braves' oversight of not placing another reliever on the roster, knowing that Pierce Johnson was hurt, going in that game May 3rd last year versus the Dodgers. and having to pitch Jesse Chavez in the bottom of the 10th inning, and him giving up the game-winning run to the Dodgers. And history repeats as that happened. A similar scenario last night, except I wouldn't say there's any necessarily bad bullpen calls. Not much Brian Snitker can do with Bryce Elder starting the game. I guess maybe pull him out after one inning. That'd be pretty wild of a move. Of course, the Dodgers, they scored a couple runs that second inning after the Braves got off to the early lead. So, possibility. Could have been a possibility. Could have been a long stretch for the bullpen. Bullpen probably would have been burned after that. Well, I'm going to have to move on. One more. So, coming back to present day, of course, Braves are 0-7 this year. The season started off with Brian Snitker, managerial blender, putting in Hector Neris. Then opening day game as well. The 29th game after, he put in Dylan Lee for 2 innings. Dylan Lee, of course, a stalwart pitcher. He's been sometimes inconsistent in 2 innings. As we also saw last season, last 2024, another interesting Brian Snitker managerial decision. April 24th versus the Guardians. Dylan Lee, he came in for a second inning and gave up 2 runs and extra inning loss. Dylan Lee had a brilliant inning prior, as he always does when he has 1 inning. And I feel like pitching Dylan Lee multiple innings is a great idea if you're up a significant amount. Of course, probably going to be going with a lower leverage option anyways in that kind of scenario. So looking at Dylan Lee, I like him as a 1 inning guy in most high leverage scenarios, not all of them. So, about to end this Brian Snitker rant, and hopefully as soon as possible get on to the next topic. But just to hammer it home, he is 15-16 in the playoffs. Do not count the 2020 season. Of course, all of us Braves fans called 2020 playoffs Mickey Mouse. Now, on top of all this, 07, the worst start since Freddie Gonzalez got fired. As mentioned online, Jurickson Profar, he tested positive for HCG, which is a substance used to mask steroid use, has been banned for 80 games as well as the 2025 playoffs. I love Brian Snitker, always appreciate him. He's one of my favorite all-time managers. At this point, I can't see the reasons for keeping him around. It just does not make sense with his contract being up this year. Uncertainty of his future with the Atlanta Braves beyond this season, between all the decision-making gaffes, disconnect in daily lives as players during the season, lack of plans for him to remain with the team beyond the season. Just like the Atlanta Braves to move on and find their future manager if possible, which is a huge statement if possible. We saw the Cubs last season. They spent all that money on Craig Counsell. Not sure if that's working for them. We saw as well other names out there. Not very many to be had. You got David Ross. He was fired by the Cubs several years ago. Probably not an upgrade on Brian Snitker. Then you have Brian McCann as well. He probably made too much in his career to really seriously come back manage full time. So there's really not a whole bunch of options for the Braves. Kevin Cash, I thought he was potentially Alex Anthopoulos is famously quoted as saying that Brian Snitker was not his guy. When he came in and took over the general manager roles for John Coppola, Alex Anthopoulos, he supposedly wanted to bring in a new manager. And I kind of thought Kevin Cash might be that manager, but Kevin Cash, he was extended by the Rays last season, so he's not going to be an option either, as he's supposed to be with the team through their rebuild until after they get a new stadium. So there's really only one name for the Braves and an obvious upgrade at the manager position, and that is Mark DeRosa, who, of course, is a manager for Team USA. He played for the Braves for 7 seasons between 1998 and 2004 after being drafted by the Braves in 1996. He's currently an analyst on MLB Network. A switch to management might be initially rough, but as we see in his coverage and time on Team USA, he's very detail-oriented, a stern leader, is Mark DeRosa, and very well liked by the players as well. He definitely helped fill any voids of vocal leadership on this Brave team if they do exist in the clubhouse, as fans speculate. I feel like fans, of course, they don't get the insight of what happens there. I feel like there's probably a lot of vocal leadership going on. And then you also have Spencer Strider and Ronald Acuna coming back. We know that they're very vocal themselves. So that's my take on the whole Brian Snitker situation. If they can get Mark DeRosa or a certain upgrade at manager, why not do it now? With uncertainty of Brian Snitker's tenure with the Braves beyond the season, and things already going so bad for the Braves, switch up the manager. Not sure you can be really fretful of what bad could possibly happen. Of course, I would give it, it's a little bit early on, I would give it until the end of this weekend. If the Braves lose versus the Marlins, a series versus the Marlins, gotta look at making decision now. If they win versus the Marlins, I think you give it more time. Wait till May, about in time when Freddie Gonzalez was fired in 2016, before you start considering making a managerial change. But if you can get someone as talented as Mark DeRosa at the manager position, that'd be a very solid idea. So, in other news, bad news for Atlanta Braves this week. Reynaldo López is having an arthroscopic surgery on his shoulder to look in and see if there's any injury on it. And that is very bad news. That means that there's so much inflammation on his shoulder that cannot be imaged in a way where they can see everything. Sometimes that happens. So they're actually having to cut open, look at. That's probably as bad. Kyle Wright, of course, we know he went down to shoulder surgery. He's now in the Royals organization. He went down, where did he go down? 2023, I think it was. And he's still not pitching. Reynaldo López, he's contracted for this season, next season as well. So it's very concerning news for Reynaldo López. Of course, he famously switched from being a starter, from being a reliever for so many years. Another question mark for this Braves organization, management, front office, what they're thinking. Of course, that happened with Ray Kerr, pitcher Ray Kerr for the Braves, who switched between roles as well. He went down with Tommy John. Now we see Reynaldo López switching between roles, going down with injury. At this point, worry about Grant Holmes, as he's a pitcher who's doing that right now as well. Ugh. Things upon things to worry about for Braves fans. Not too much positive to be hopeful about right now. Hopefully they turn around tomorrow. Aforementioned, they have 23 games left in April, and all of them are going to be against weaker opponents than the Dodgers and Padres, as they look absolutely stalwart this season. They had a little bit of shaky spring training batting-wise and starting pitching-wise. Dylan Cease, Michael King start off the spring really slow, but they turned it on, and of course they look fabulous versus the Braves, and are undefeated so far this season are the Padres. The one positive takeaway from yesterday's game is Bryce Elder was successful versus Shohei Ohtani. Of course, he gave up a run, so very small positive thing to be happy about. As Shohei Ohtani got the last laugh with a walk-off home run. The Atlanta Braves last night, they started Eli White over Michael Harris II. As CJ noted in the broadcast, the team was looking to start Eli White versus left-handed pitcher. A platoon scenario that I had not thought was possible. The Braves are thinking of platooning Michael Harris II. I'm not sure about that idea. Despite Michael Harris's home run in the game April 1st, the Braves are already pessimistic on his 160 batting average. This is alarming and a panic button move by the Braves, as Michael Harris II, he had reverse splits versus left-handed starters just last season with a 286 average, 315 AB, but only 19 of his 48 RBIs. Organization is now treating him somewhat like a 4A player, which is a very concerning trend. Nearly 3 years after giving him a $72 million extension, patience appears to be running short in the organization. I've stated online that I've been seeing some things in his swing. Of course, always compare him to Mookie Betts, a player I think he could potentially see comparable numbers to offensively. And Michael Harris's swing is more compact and short to the ball, maybe a better long-term strategy. And as well, being more selective, being able to see the ball come in further through the zone, being more selective in pitches. That Mookie Betts, his swing, of course, has that big windup. More success. No real difference to me. Watching them both is how long the barrel of the bat shows through the zone. Michael Harris's swing, you see a flash of the bat through the zone, while Mookie's, you see a long and deliberate elongation of the barrel through the zone when he swings. Surely, Michael Harris is working on this. If he can accomplish this with his more compact swing, then that would be hopefully result in better contact with the baseball when he's at bat. So, last night's game saw another interesting decision with Chadwick Tromp. He was walked to lead off the inning. He made it to third base, but he was unable to be sent on fly ball from Michael Harris to Teoscar Hernandez in left field. Somewhat shallow left ball to left field. Chadwick Tromp, he was the base runner at third base. I feel like if you had a more agile base runner, maybe a player like Eli White, he was, of course, started the game, so he's not going to be available off the bench. Might have a better chance at getting the runner score. Of course, they had a short bench, so not really much an option there. I guess you could have had Orlando Arcia pinch run. Not sure how much, probably be marginally faster than Chadwick Tromp there. And then you'd have Drake Baldwin come in and bat. It still would have been an interesting move. Orlando Arcia, of course, he's an infielder. I think they're looking at kind of platooning him with Nick Allen right now, so wouldn't quite call him everyday player, but sending him from third base on a shallow fly ball left field, maybe a little bit risky, more risky than the Braves would like to go here on the 7th game into the season. So in spring training, the Braves overall, they feasted on minor league pitching. That's where the bulk of their offensive numbers came. In spring training, they famined on major league pitching. Some experts dismiss this. There are all kinds of takes from they're bored with spring training. They want to get to the regular season action. To spring training stats just simply don't matter. And for everyone such as myself who formulated beliefs that the players are perhaps not taking spring training seriously are now subject to as much ridicule as possible, as believing in those pundits was, and not what I already saw with the Braves struggling versus the major league pitchers and feasting on the minor league pitchers there in spring training. That did not work out well for us. So the Braves spring training woes are just as real in the regular season as they were 2 weeks ago in spring training. Not a single qualified player is hitting over the Mendoza line on the Braves. As the leader in hitting, Marcell Ozuna has a 5.52 OBP with 13 walks. We saw him walk a lot last night, which Brian Snitker had the interesting lineup. Marcell Ozuna second. I wouldn't mind him first. If he's getting on base all that much, put him first in the lineup. It's kind of what do you do at this point? Perhaps the Braves, as well as I wrote down, perhaps the Braves should extend Marcell Ozuna before he leaves in the offseason, just like Freddie Freeman, Dansby Swanson did, Max Fried, Charlie Morton, Travis d'Arnaud, all gone. So Nick Allen, he's of course not qualified in average, but he has a 364 average with 4 hits and 13 ABs. We're likely going to be seeing more of Nick Allen at shortstop here in the short near-term future. Do like that move by Brian Snitker, shaking things up at shortstop with the struggles of Orlando Arcia. Eli White, 1 hit and 4 at-bats last night. Jurickson Profar, he has a 200 average before, of course, being suspended for PE. Ozzy Albies, so far this season, he's batting 185 with 1 home run, 4 RBIs, 574 OPS. Michael Harris, 160 average, 1 home run, 1 RBI this season, 440 OPS. Jared Kelenic, 150 average, 1 home run, 1 RBI, 450 OPS this season. Austin Riley, 111 average, 1 home run, 1 RBI, 431 OPS. Nick Allen, aforementioned, 364 average. Orlando Arcia, 154 average, 0 RBI, 0 home run, a 308 OPS, on base plus slugging percentage, just not good. 182 average for Matt Olson with 0 home runs, 2 RBIs, 697 OPS in the 7 games. Marcell Ozuna in the 7 games, 188 average, with 2 RBIs, no home runs yet, and 740 OPS. Take a look at our pitchers so far. Chris Sale's already thrown 2 games, 10 innings so far, 27% strikeout rate, very low 2.3% ball rate, very low, less than 1 home runs per 9 inning, 3.33 BIP, 40.7% ground ball rate, 5.4 ERA, 2.65 FIP, which is outstanding. And we should see that ERA trend downwards and reflect more what his FIP is. 0.2 WAR already accrued by Chris Sale. Spencer Schwellenbach himself, 5% walk rate, a little bit more than Chris Sale so far this season. Only 1 game started, 6 innings pitched. We're probably going to see him tomorrow night. Home opener, Spencer Schwellenbach. 20% strikeout rate. He's given up no home runs in his first outing. Already a 0.2 WAR, as much as Chris Sale in just 1 game. And a 2.52 FIP. So we should see Spencer Schwellenbach's successes continue. And hopefully with a win tomorrow night. So Pierce Johnson so far, 2 games this season, 2 innings pitched, 42.9% strikeout rate. Outstanding, 0 ERA. He probably should have been in the game several times when we saw other guys, such as Hector Neris in the opener. So Daysbel Hernandez, 3 games so far, 2.1 innings pitched. He's been outstanding. A 2 FIP. Now going back to Pierce Johnson, kind of crazy. He's got a negative FIP, 0.15 for Pierce Johnson. It's crazy. League average is just over 4, by the way. So if you're under 4, then that's trending pretty good. And if you're under 3, if it's negative, whoa. So Pierce Johnson outstanding so far. Daysbel Hernandez, 0 ERA, 2 FIP. The Braves got some bullpen pieces. They just need to think about when to use them. AJ Smith-Shawver, 1 game so far, 4 innings. He had a bit of tough luck. 3.1 FIP backs up that narrative. And his 4.5 ERA should trend downwards. I hope the Braves, and it's not going to be any hoping, with Reynaldo López going down, AJ Smith-Shawver is going to stay in the rotation for the near future. So hopefully he has a great start. I think he will be going Saturday for the Braves. Be interesting to see what they do with the rotation. Probably see Chris Sale go Sunday. And Bryce Elder again next Monday. Hopefully they make a move. I wouldn't mind seeing Hurston Waldrop. Why not? Use a Bryce Elder option. Just send him back down. Unless you want to put him in the bullpen, DFA somebody. That's always an option too. Aniel de Los Santos. He's had a little bit of tough luck so far. ERA of 3. He's looked good from left side, throwing that mid-upper 90s fastball from left side. I feel good about Aniel de Los Santos. If he can command his pitches a little bit better, I feel like he'll have a fair amount of success with the Braves. He, of course, has the 4 strikeouts in 2 games pitched with that nice velo on his fastball, as well a 1.67 whip for Aniel de Los Santos. Offense is the key for the Braves so far in their struggles. Their bullpen, yes, they did not replace AJ Minter or Joe Jimenez. There's potential options to do that via trade this season. The Braves are loaded there in the prospects, more so at the pitching side, more so with starting pitching prospects who are a year to a couple of years off. Names like Drew Hackenberg, J.R. Ritchie, Owen Murphy, Ian Mejia, he's dropped down there in the prospects list. So, interesting names to look out for are 2 names on the Rays. They have 2 nice lefties. Mason Montgomery, absolute stud from left side. He's more of a dream trade scenario. I'm not even sure what the Braves would have to give up in a Mason Montgomery trade. Probably imagine what Marlins got for Tanner Scott and then add something sizable to that. As Mason Montgomery, he's basically like Mason Miller from left side. High velo, fastball, slider. Although his mix percentage, his usage percentages are a little bit different. Then the Rays also have another left-handed pitcher. I remember his name correctly. I believe it's Garrett Clevenger. Let's look at this up. Yeah, Garrett Clevenger from left side. We saw him some in spring training. He'd be a stalwart lefty for the Braves to add there in the bullpen. And he would not be nearly the amount of prospects trade capital that Mason Montgomery trade would command. So he's a little bit more realistic option. As well, the Twins, they have relievers. They need offensive pieces. Pittsburgh Pirates are another team going to be looking at for potential relievers for the Braves to add at the trade deadline. That is assuming things turn around in some hopeful form or fashion to the Braves looking at making the playoffs again. Currently talking 0-7, adding relievers. Pretty dubious. As far as shortstop and middle infield, the Mets, with their struggles, they would never want to help out the Braves, right? Probably not. But they were really struggling. They, of course, have Ronald Acuna Jr.'s brother, Luis Angel Acuna. I could see a world where that could potentially work out. The Braves need a middle infielder. Mets need pitching. Do they put their differences aside and reunite Ronald Acuna Jr. with his brother and get the pitching that the Mets need, the pitching prospects they need to contend within Juan Soto's contract extension window? The Braves could help out with that. And Luis Angel Acuna, come over, maybe play some shortstop, and maybe play second base after Ozzie Albies' contract is over. So potential trades already looking for the Atlanta Braves. A couple of scenarios. Very unlikely. I think Garrett Clevenger is probably the most likely player the Braves could trade for that I've mentioned so far. Jimmy Herget as well. He was on the Braves, I believe, last season. He's on the Rockies right now. He had a good spring training. Haven't looked at his stats prior to this episode. He was doing good last I looked. Pretty decent. He'd be another name the Braves could trade for and potentially not cost very much as far as trade capital from the Rockies. Who knows? Might just want some cash. Maybe a lower prospect and some cash for Jimmy Herget. The starting pitchers have not even started to look. This Reynaldo López news is still a little bit fresh, of course, just coming on over the other day. So far, we've been focused on offense and relief pitchers. Really need to get a shortstop for the Braves. Not sure what they're going to do. Nick Allen, certainly a nice temporary option. Jose Perdomo, their star shortstop prospect. The FCL Braves season has not started. I've not gotten much data of how he's doing so far this season. It'll be an interesting name to watch. Hopefully he has an upshot and makes it to the Braves by next season. Very doubtful. But at this point, with what we have, I gotta have some hopeful for the Braves turnaround here this season, as well as acquiring talent and filling roster holes. So, coming up, aforementioned, the Braves have 23 games left in April. Upcoming series, Marlins this weekend, home opener. Phillies next weekend as home games continue. Then they play versus the Rays there in Tampa. Just a short drive, moderate drive down I-75 there. The George Steinbrenner Field there. Yankee spring training facility where the Rays are currently playing. They would all look like winnable series prior to the start of the season. Now things look a little bit dubious for the Braves. As well, the Atlanta Hawks have 6 games left. And keep track of them. Hopefully they stay below the Kings in the NBA standings, and hopefully the Kings stay above 12th place. It'd be really nice to get Kings' first round draft pick. So, thanks for listening. This episode of the BOS Sports Podcast. Be sure to stream previous episodes of the BOS Sports Podcast. And we'll be back with a monster episode soon.